So I think I've created a system whereby we can always have a balanced stitch. That system involves measuring the tension pull of the bobbin thread and then also measuring the tension pull of the top thread. Prior to this revelation, I didn't think I wanted to even try to measure the tension of my top because I was afraid of damaging the spring as I was pulling and using this Tajima tension gauge. You know, I would pull, you'd have to pull so hard that, I didn't want to damage the spring. But then I got a light bulb moment that, well, what if I just didn't thread into the spring and I just threaded into the disc? So I did that. I basically just pulled the thread out completely, and this is a 15, it's a 1590 or a 91, they're the same, and I put it in the first guide and then through the tension disc, which is normally where it goes next. Usually we grab the spring and bring it up and hook this hook with the thread, but I'm not going to grab the spring. I'm just going to come up and go into that hook. And so now, and I'm holding the thread over here because, I'm wasting a lot of thread. But I'm all the way into where the thread looks like it was, hooked by that finger. But I'm going to just hold it straight up, and I'm actually going to just hold both threads in my hand tight, and then pull the lever down. And then I'll put this one back in the guide, pull my threads. And so now I'm under tension, and I have it set at 4. Now, mind you, I already set my machine. In other words, I already set my bobbin tension to 30 grams using the Tajima, did a test sew, adjusted my top tension till the stitch was balanced. Then once it was balanced, I pushed this dial in and set it on 4. And that's how I set my machines now. I make sure that all my machines, when I turn this dial to number 4, that's set for sewing on cotton with just regular, polyester thread. Like this is a Tex 30, which is equivalent to like a 40 weight or a 35 weight thread. So I already set that. So now when I pull on this thread with the Tajima and test the pull of this top, I'm going to see what kind of pull goes with a balanced stitch on cotton when my bobbin is set at 30 grams. So I just go ahead and I hook it, and it's under tension. Sometimes I have to make sure it's in the disc, so I'm going to lift up and then lift back down. So then here is 0, here is 50, and there's 100. So I always pull the same way, straight up. The discs are closed, and we'll see what we measure. So as I pull, I'll have to try to follow this. You can see it's somewhere around 90 as I'm pulling straight up. So that means that the top thread is got a tension of 90 grams. So now I know what the numbers are that give me a balanced stitch when I have 30 grams in the bobbin and I've adjusted the top, it gave me like a stitch that looks like this. This is the stitch. It's nice and straight. The stitches are straight. There's no bobbin thread coming up through the top. If I go like this, it's tight but not too tight. If I take my fingernail the other way, I don't feel the bobbin threads coming up. And if you turn it around, the back looks the same as the front. And the same thing. If you go like this, they're tight but not too tight. So that's pricking the stitches perpendicular. And if you take your finger parallel to the stitches, you don't feel any pokies. You don't feel the top thread coming up. That's a balanced stitch, meaning that the threads meet, the top and bottom meet in the middle here. They're buried in there. So that's great, but people would always ask, well, okay, it's balanced, but what if I want to loosen both the top and the bottom and still have a balanced stitch? Well, how do I do it? Well, now that we know the numbers that give us a balanced stitch, we can use those two numbers in like a formula. Actually, you just put them into a fraction. You make them into a fraction. Because remember, a fraction is just comparing two numbers. That's all it is. And we use it for everything. When you're driving your car, your speed is miles per hour. The miles is in the numerator, and the hours is in the time or whatever, the hours is in the denominator. So you've got distance over time. You're just comparing two things, and that gives you something you can work with. So we'll do the same thing with our bobbin tension and our top tension. So we're going to compare the two numbers that we just found that give us a balanced stitch. So we'll put the bobbin tension in the numerator and the top tension in the denominator. And then we'll just fill in those values. So remember, I had told you I set my bobbin tension already for 30 grams. Using the Tajima, I set the bobbin tension for 30. And then I set the top tension to an unknown number. I just set it until I got this balanced stitch. And once I got that balanced stitch, then I took a reading of the top and saw that it was 90 grams. So now I know that 30 in the bobbin and 90 in the top give me a balanced stitch when I'm stitching on cotton with regular standard polyester Tex 30 or 35/40 weight thread. So then to use this fraction or this relationship between these two numbers, to use it to my benefit, I kind of want to reduce it so that it's easier to work with. So when we use a fraction in that manner, we usually reduce the numerator to a number 1. And I should rephrase that. You usually reduce the smaller of the two numbers to a number 1. Well, that's why I put the bobbin in the numerator, because I knew it would be the smaller number. I want the 1 up there. It's just easier to work with. So let's make this a 1. Well, how do we make this a 1? Well, if you recall in grade school, when you take a fraction and you want to reduce a fraction to its lowest figure, you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So to make this a 1, we just take 30 divided by 30, and that gives us 1. Well, we have to do the same thing to the denominator, if you recall. So we have to divide that by 30, because that's, in essence, just 30 over 30 is just the number 1. So when you do anything with the number 1, whether you're dividing, multiplying, or whatever, you're not really even changing the value of the entire fraction, or number, any number. So that's why we have to do them both by 30. Well, 90 divided by 30 is 3. So now we have a usable fraction that we can use going forward, and we can use this to our benefit. Say we wanted a bobbin tension of 50 because we're working with leather or really thick thread like bonded nylon, Tex 70 bonded nylon. Well, when we do that, we want our bobbin tension and our top tension to be stronger. And we want our bobbin to be more like 50 or 60. And so we can use this fraction. And I just wanted to show you off to the side here, on my Janome, my modern Janome plastic machine, I did the same measuring of bobbin and top tensions, and I got a 33 and a 100. And those are those automatic machines, so this number is correct. Because if my Janome's given me a 1 to 3, because this reduces to 1/3. 33 divided by 33 is 1. 100 divided by 33 is about 3. So anyways, so we're going to use this to try and figure out say we wanted 40 grams of pull. Say we stitched out and we were using, just who knows, whatever kind of fabric or whatever kind of thread. And we were like, I like it. It looks balanced, but it's just a little too loose. I'd like it to be slightly tighter on both top and bottom. Well, usually we just go and we crank up the top. Well, if you do that, you're not balanced anymore. So, unless, of course, I shouldn't say that. There are circumstances where you can do that because you have a thick thread in the bobbin, and that's what happens to me with bonded nylon. I have a thick thread in the bottom and in the top. And so I have to increase just the top. But I always check to make sure I'm still balanced. So anyways, so let's just say you wanted 40 grams in the bobbin, so you tightened your bobbin, and to me it seems like 10 minutes tighter in the bobbin gives you 10 more grams. That's what I'm finding. So let's say you tightened your bobbin. You tightened your bobbin to 40. And you're going to use this 1/3 conversion factor. And if you remember this little formula here from junior high, they usually have an X here. Well, how do we solve for that question mark or X? Well, we can say, well, 1 times what gives us 40? Well, 1 times 40 gives us 40. So then we have to multiply 3 by 40. 3 times 40 then would be 120. So that would be our top tension. The other way to solve these are by doing cross multiplication. Remember when we learned that and we were like, it makes no sense, but it works. It does make sense if you go through it all. But anyways, you could do, you multiply these two. You multiply them. 3 times 40 is 120, and then you divide by the leftover. 120 divided by 1 gives you 120. So either way, you could do it this way, or you can cross multiply. So then, okay, I'm going to set my bobbin to 40 using the Tajima, and I'm going to set my top to 120 using the Tajima. Basically, I'm just going to turn the top tension knob here. Maybe I'll go from 4 to 5. I'll put it on 5. But for the bobbin, of course, to get this 40, we have to turn it maybe 10 minutes. So this would be like 10 minutes. And this would be like maybe from 4 to 5 on the top, So then let's go on. Let's say you're working with vinyl and leather and you want to make sure that when you put in your thick thread, that you're getting 50 grams of pull in the bobbin. On my machine, if I put a thick bonded nylon Tech 70 in the bobbin, I automatically get 50 grams of pull. I don't have to change anything in the bobbin. But what's interesting is, am I getting the correct pull in the top? Usually not. If I measure the top, even if I'm using bonded nylon, since it's so slippery, I usually do have to tighten the top. Well, what do we have to tighten the top to? Well, let's do it. And I'll do it using this method up here. So here's our conversion factor. We want 50 in the bobbin. Because you notice I'm always putting the bobbin number in, because you always start with the bobbin. That's always your first step. And then you go from there. But anyways, I'll just do it this more simplistic way. So 1 times what gives us 50? Well, 1 times 50 gives us 50. Notice I'm multiplying now. Here I was dividing because I was going from big to small. Now I'm going from small to big. But at any rate, so 1 times 50 is 50. Well, then 3 times 50 is 150. So I have to set my top tension dial to read 150 grams of pull with this gauge. So I'm thinking it's about a 6. But, I've messed with this so much, and I even changed my tension a little and put in a new different spring. And so, but before it was about like a 6 for me. So, and you can go on and on and on from there. And I don't suggest going higher than 60 grams of pull on these domestic machines, but I have wanted 60 grams in the bobbin on certain occasions. I just thought it looked better, like really dense leather or something, or I don't know. So, and I'll just do the cross multiplying on this one. So 30, 3 times 6 is 18, so 180. 180 divided by 1 is 180. So you need 180 on the top to get 60 on the bottom and still be balanced. So that was a real revelation. Now, here's the other thing. This is only $20, this Tajima gauge. And you can use a TOA gauge, not when you're doing the top one. Let me move this out of the way. But when you're doing the bobbin, I'm going to have to put this over here. Because it's too hard to do this, you know, for the top. The top one is easier with this Tajima. And like I said, you could do both of them with the Tajima. You just don't get as accurate as you do with a TOA. Now, this manual TOA, it's nice and I like it. It was, you know, I got it a while ago. It only goes up to 40 grams. It says 400 here, but those are measured in millinewtons. That basically just you're multiplying grams by 10. It's like going from centimeters to millimeters. But at any rate, it only goes up to 40 grams, you know, or 400 millinewtons. So if you're wanting to get like 50 grams of pull, like for the leather in that, this manual TOA is not going to help you. But it's good for anything between 20 and 30. Even if you wanted 40 grams of pull, it's not going to be good because 40 is the end of the range, and so you don't know if you're really going off or what. But between 20 and 30 grams, this one is okay. This is $50. 20 grams would be for what we were talking about for the, when you stitch on knits, you know, you need to decrease your tension in the bobbin and in the top. So this would be good for that. The digital TOA has a huge range. It goes from 0 to 500 grams, not 500 millinewtons, 500 grams. I ordered one of those because I want to see how accurate it can be. They say they're not great because you can't diagnose a shaky bobbin, but I kind of think I can now that I'm more experienced. So at any rate, you could use these exterior here and measure the bobbin, and I've come up with a way to do it with the manual one. It's not the greatest. That's the other reason why I'm buying the digital. The digital one is a little bit more accurate, and you'll see what I mean. So anyways, you put it right in front of the bobbin. You take your bobbin thread. It's coming out of the hole there. And you go around this pulley here. And I just kind of push it up against the bed of the machine. So you go to the right, and I know you can't see, but this is the bottom of this unit. And then you come diagonally around the top. And now here's the thing. Normally for embroiderers and that, they come and they go underneath this. Well, you can't with, you know, having it external like this and not having a bobbin in there, because usually a bobbin case is in there. So you can't use this. What I found is this little point right here is right where you want your thread to be when you pull, and that gives you an accurate reading. So, I mean, that's not going to work for me. It does work, but I'm not going to like it. It's too hard to keep it steady, but you'll see if I stay right at that point, I get about 300. It's actually, see how this isn't straight? You have to make sure that that's straight as well. And it's actually pulling tighter. And it could be because I'm at the end of my bobbin here. Because it's right now it's at 350, which means that's 35 grams. And here's the thing, if I go like this and change the angle, now I'm coming here with the thread, now it goes down to 30. But you don't want to do that. You want to be accurate or consistent all the time. I just measured 30 a little while ago. And like I said, when you get lower in thread, that does happen. So I am going to go ahead and put a fuller bobbin in here just to make sure everything's okay. So yeah, this one's pretty low, and sometimes they do get tighter when they get lower, and that was one of the things I learned with the long arm machine, and that's pretty much, they tell you as your bobbin gets lower, you do need to test your tension, your bobbin tension with your TOA gauge, because it will change. So let's try this bobbin. It's almost full, it's fuller, because I was getting 30 grams earlier. Okay, and the other thing is, you know, since I have to pull the thread, I don't really have a guide with this TOA. It's not as consistent as what the digital one will be. The digital one has specific pulleys that you can use even when you do it like this, you know, with your bobbin in the machine. And then they also allow you to go through the guide. So that's why I got it, because I want to have a consistent pathway. But so I went ahead, went around this pulley diagonally above this one. So we're right around 300, 320, 310. So, I mean, that's pretty close. But like I said, I'd really like to have the digital TOA just because it's exact and gives exact guides and so on. So I will definitely follow up with that, and I'll give you all an update on how it's working out for me. So I'll use the digital one here for the bobbin, and then I'll use the Tajima for the upper thread. And then again, if you only have $20 to spend, just get the Tajima and use it for both, you know. Focus. Okay. So it's reading about 30, but you know, you can't see if is it 33 or 35. It's hard to tell. That's why this one is more fine-tuned, but like I said, I don't have a good pathway that's consistent. So if you're talking to somebody on the phone or a video chat, and you're like, I can't get my tension right or whatever, and they'll be like, well, what are you working on? And you'll say vinyl and such thread, and so the other person will say, well, when I use vinyl, in that thread. I use 50 grams in the bobbin and 150 in the top. Do you have your Tajima? Just go ahead and set your machine and try it. And so then you can help somebody quickly, easily, concretely. It's just so much easier than guessing and wondering, and you can't see the thread, you can't focus. It's a better way to communicate and help people. So, anyways, so there you go. I hope I've helped you, and I will follow up when I do get the digital TOA. Okay, thanks.